We'll hear about the website OnlyFans. That's a subscription service. People pay quite a lot of money every month to see celebrities and ordinary people scantily clad. Well, they're getting rid of some of the adult material from their website. But is that a mistake, and is it bad news for sex workers? We'll cover that shortly. But it's time now for Uncancelled, in which we tackle subjects much of the media shy away from. Tonight, why is America losing control of cyberspace to China, and why does it matter? Well, joining me to discuss this very important issue is Ariana Wolde, political commentator and contributor to Young Voices UK and founder of Off Topic Politics. Ariana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, can you explain to a Luddite like me what exactly cyberspace is?
Cyberspace is basically just where all our information is held. So this can include critical infrastructure, such as our defense technology. It can include stuff like telephones, gas, you name it. Everything is connected to cyberspace these days.
Okay, and is it the cloud where all of our photos and emails are kept?
Yes, all of your data, all of your little secrets, everything that you search is within cyberspace.
Oh, I wish I had secrets.
Yeah.
But plenty of
a
people
lot of
do,
people
and
do.
the British government have secrets too. So some of the information that's in cyberspace is classified and politically sensitive.
It is, and that is the information that people are out to get, and they will be able to get if we do not set out some rules for cyberspace.
All right. So you're concerned, aren't you, that America have lost ground in the control for cyberspace to China?
Yes, I mean, we very quickly entered a new era of warfare, and it's nothing like we've ever seen before. Traditional warfare, you know who you're fighting, but within cyberspace, hackers can be completely anonymous and they can attack without having to cross a single border. When you throw a nuclear missile or a bomb or a shot, you hear it, you know it's there. But with cyberspace, it's a silent war that you're fighting.
Yes, and we've seen, haven't we, for example, the NHS shut down because of hackers a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So you can imagine if Russia or China had the capability and they just, I don't know, maybe Putin woke up one day on the wrong side of the bed and decided to shut off all the power in America, for example, just how catastrophic that could be.
Well, I think that's every day, sadly, round at Putin's. But we also have to be
Likely.
concerned about international finance, don't we?
Yes, of course. Our international system is largely connected to cyberspace. So you could wake up one day, look in the bank, and have nothing there if we cannot control our cyberspace.
So what do we need to do about it? What can a country like the UK do?
A country like the UK, I think it's nothing that one country can solve. Cyberspace has infinite actors, it has infinite opponents, attackers, and defenders. It is definitely not something that can be left up to just the UK or just America or just China, which is why I must emphasize cooperation. So I think the US, being the current leader in cyberspace, should team up with the runner up, which is China. Experts predict that it's just going to take under a decade for China to reach parity with the US when it comes to cyber capabilities. So I think they should lead an effort to sit everybody down, gather everyone around the table, and set out what it is that we should have in place to ensure that no country is left in utter chaos because of these attacks.
I suppose cyberspace, by definition, is what, 2 or 3 decades old. So we're still very much
Yeah.
learning on the job.
Yes, it is very, very new, but it grows exponentially in development. We are seeing it year by year. So I really must stress the urgency in this. And I think it's kind of reminds me of the 1950s, for example, when we had nuclear weapons just coming to public knowledge. Nobody really took it too seriously back then, or it was all a bit mystical and too difficult to understand. But lo and behold, just a decade later, you had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we were facing mutually assured destruction. We really want to make sure that doesn't happen this time with cyberspace. We need to get it right.
So Russia or China, rather than launch a missile in 10 years' time, they could simply empty our bank accounts or, I don't know, decode our nuclear weapons.
Yeah, exactly. And it would certainly be a lot cheaper for them. And who knows, they could get away without even having to confess that they did it.
Is there much evidence that there have been crimes committed in cyberspace already?
Well, we certainly have a lot of accusations flailing about. You have just recently, for example, the US accusing China of the Microsoft Exchange hack, and just last year, the SolarWinds hack, and they were accusing Russia of that. So, whilst it's really difficult to prove concretely, there are a lot of signs, and you can put two and two together as to who is behind it if they don't themselves decide to confess.
But can we have any hope that China would collaborate with Western nations to actually have
They've
rules around
actually
cyberspace?
suggested it before themselves. China, I think, unlike what the US is trying to suggest, isn't out for global domination. They're not out to be the global hegemon in the same way that
Could
the
have fooled
US has
me.
been for the last 30 years. Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes to remember, but I think once you look at the CCP and the narratives that they've been putting out since their conception, it's very much been about just protecting China's national interest and being recognized as a global player, but not necessarily being a global hegemon, which is very different to what the US would have you believe.
Clearly, nation states are a potential threat, but what about individuals? Can we legislate against somebody in their bedroom causing global destruction?
No, I think we certainly can, and there have been moves to do so. But again, this is something that nations need to come together because you might be in your bedroom, but you could be attacking somebody in Taiwan or in Australia. And I think that is not something that is subject just to domestic law, but international law. So it's something to speak about at the table once again.
And do you think that large tech firms like Google and Apple can actually help? I mean, is the software there at our disposal to make cyberspace a safer place?
I think it certainly is. And I'm glad that you mentioned firms like Google because they too have a responsibility. It isn't just governments when it comes to protecting our information systems and our data. The private sector definitely does have a role to play. And I think technology develops day by day. Every day you have a new cyber tool that could end life as we know it, just to be a bit dramatic. But I think they definitely do have the technology to counter that, should they be incentivized.
Are you sympathetic to the British government's decision to cancel the Huawei contract to roll out 5G technology in the UK? Is that a sensible move to make sure that the Chinese don't have such a footprint when it comes to our technology infrastructure?
I think I am sympathetic to that solely because I do believe that that was not something necessarily influenced by the US, although many people thought that it was. I think Britain, particularly now, and for example, with the foreign policy and PR disaster that we had in Afghanistan, need to be establishing themselves as an autonomous state and not being influenced by anyone, not Europe, not the US, and all foreign policy decisions, for better or worse, should be representative of what we, the British people, and the British government actually believe.
I mean, it's not inconceivable that a bad foreign actor could quite literally switch out the lights in Britain.
No, it isn't, and that is why I think Britain as well should be having a seat at the table and should be encouraging America actually to take that first leap forward in mending relationships with China.
And there are parallels, aren't there, between cyberspace and space itself, where there's a battle
Yeah.
of technology in the skies.
Certainly. I think the reason that we're even seeing that is because, military prowess and military strength isn't what it once was. It's not the badge of honor that used to command respect on the international stage like it did during World War II or even during the Cold War. I think now it is all about trying to command those new, whether it's cyberspace or space itself, new domains. And that's where people are going to be, states are going to be looking to prove their strength and their capabilities.
And actually, much of the physical infrastructure of cyberspace exists in space through these enormous satellites. And we discovered 6 months ago that some of the Russian satellites are armed. They actually contain weapons with which to attack other satellites.
That's very characteristic of Russia, isn't it? Of course, they would arm it. But yes, I think that is more so just another reason why we need to have these rules. Is it right? Is it fair that Russia should be able to just set up such an aggressive, not just on Earth but in space, such an aggressive foreign policy like that. We need to be able to assert pressure, but we can only do that if we are united on the international front, and that can't just be the West. It can't just be the Five Eyes alliance. It needs to be everybody.
And do you think it could be like the nuclear deterrent, where if we don't collaborate with China and they don't collaborate with us, that nobody wins?
Very much so. A cyber war, an all-out cyber war, is an unwinnable one. There is no winner, there is no loser. Everybody will be affected, in a good way and in a bad way. So I think we all have a vested interest in making sure that we can establish some kind of universal framework for protecting ourselves.
So are you suggesting, therefore, that if China were to attack the West in terms of cyberspace, that they would be damaged too?
I think very much so. I think in an increasingly globalized world, for example, uh, uh, with the tech firms that are moving from country to country, we will feel the economic impact. If China's economy goes down as a result of a cyber attack, that's going to be felt all across the world. Supply chains all across the world will be disrupted. It's not something that will be isolated in one area.
How did you become so interested in this area?
I think I'm interested in all things foreign policy, and how can you not be interested in something that could mean you wake up tomorrow and life is completely different?
Do you think there's a generation of politicians, perhaps older than you, who don't take this seriously enough because they don't understand what's at play?
I mean, I think that could be possible. I think it's not an uncommon trope to have the older generation be skeptical of anything to do with technology and computers. But I think anybody that's paying attention to geopolitical tensions will identify cyberspace as something to focus on. And anyone, even who was who felt the legacy of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the scare around nuclear weapons will be able to see the parallels here.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the threat of Hitler in the early 1930s, which was ignored by many and, of course, came to tragic fruition. What's going to happen, Ariana? What's your best guess about the next 10 years in terms of cyberspace?
I mean, I think that is entirely dependent on the US. If they are able to swallow their pride and actually recognize China as a fellow global superpower, then we might be able to see the kind of collaboration that would ensure our collective future. But if the Biden administration and administrations to come continue to refuse to do that and continue to demonize China, I think we might very well find ourselves in the face of another instance of mutually assured destruction.
Fascinating conversation, albeit sobering and worrying as well. Ariana, thank you for joining us. Ariana Wolde is a political commentator and contributor to Young Voices UK and founder of Off Topic Politics. Lots of feedback coming in. GB Views at gbnews.uk.